This is Gemara Baba Basra Daf Chof, and we're holding in the very bottom of Yutes Amid Beis, and we're in the middle of a sidebar sugya in which we're figuring out what items will close up the gap and disallow Tuma from transferring. Yesterday we spoke about the halacha that Tumas Oyel, whenever something is inside a house, all the items in the house, of course, are Tameh. And the question is that if we have a window between, let's say, room A and room B, and the corpse is in room A, at what level will the window transfer the Tuma to room B? And the answer is that the window has to have an opening of at least a tefach by a tefach. And we spoke yesterday that if different items close up that hole of a tefach by a tefach, at what point are they considered to be closing it up? And at what point do we say, no, you're eventually just going to remove them, and therefore they're not considered that they close up the hole? So asks the Gemara that a chavis, we said yesterday that a chavis does not close up the hole. Ask the Gemara in the last line of Yutesam and Beis, what is the case of the chavis that does not close up the hole? If it's facing outward, away from the room in which the dead body is in, he gufa techotz. Says the Gemara, then it itself should act as a chatzitza, as we turn over to Chaf Amid Aleph. Why? Because what is the barrel made out of? Cheres. It's made out of earthenware, and earthenware does not become tamei mi gaboy through its outside. So if the barrel is facing outward, if here's my barrel and it's facing outward, so the whole back part of the barrel blocks the tama, because the barrel only could be metame through the opening. So says the Gemara, one of two answers. Ella, says the Gemara, what must the case be? The pumalegoi. It's facing inward, so now the barrel is open towards the corpse, and therefore could yes be makabel tama. As could be assumed of a barrel of metal. Says the Gemara Meisvei, continuing the discussion of Tama, and particularly asking on the din of Shmuel. As Shmuel is how we started on yesterday in New Testament Beis, the bottom of Rav Tuvi Bar Kistamar Shmuel, Rakik Einai Memait Bechaloim, a wafer. Why? Because we said you're going to remove that wafer. Meisvei asked the Gemara from the following brayso: Asavin shetolshan v'nichaloin, grass that you pick off and you leave in a window. It grows on its own to a window. A piece of fabric, which is not 3 by 3 fingers. Either a part of a limb of a body, skipped a line, a word, excuse me. V'habasar amduldalin bebehema b'chaya, limb or flesh dangling from an animal or a wild animal. V'oif, a bird, sheshachin b'chalayim, it sits on a window. V'akov sheyashe b'chalayim, a non-Jew that sits on a window. All these different items on a window, and again, this is the window that's separating two areas of Tama. Uben shmoina hamunach b'chalayim, a baby of an 8-month pregnancy is lying on a window. V'hamelech, salt, ukli chares, an earthenware vessel. V'sefer Torah, Sefer Torah is lying on the window still. All of these cases, says the Braisa, kulan mimatin bechaloim. All of these cases, yes, subtract, yes, diminish the size of a window. However, avol hasheleg, snow, v'habaran, and hail, v'haglid, frost, v'hakfar, ice, v'hamayim, and water, kulam ein mimatin b'chaloim. Those items do not diminish the area of the window. Why not? So we look at Rashi, v'hasheleg v'habaran, and from the contrast, this will be clear. Hayel v'nimukim eileim ein mimatin v'chein mayim shebikli. Hayel v'minat lakli ein b'vnei atzim atim echaloim. So what do we see? We see with this brisa, any item that could stand on its own, yes, diminishes the size, irregardless if the item is going to be removed. Asks the Gemara, and the Gemara articulates the precise question, V'asavim chazi lebehemtoi. You're not going to leave the grass there. Why did you pick it? To give to your behema. And yet, even though you're going to give it to your behema, the Brisa says it is mimayit. It still decreases. So why should the rakik the wafer not? Says the Gemara, be'af razta. We're talking about afrazta, poisonous grass, which you would not use for animal food. Next case, the grass went on its own. You're not going to leave the grass there. Why not? Because grass growing at such a scenario is bad for your wall. It could ruin the wall. So you're going to remove it. And yes, it diminishes the size. Amarava, Bekaisel, Chorva. It's a destroyed building. Rapapa Amar, if you look Bekaisel Yishav, Bebayin. Chutz l'shleisha l'chalain. It's from beyond 3 tfachim to the window, and such grass is not going to really damage the window. Matlanius. Next was the scraps. Says the Gemara, chazil kriya, delevusha. They have a use to tear, to patch up a garment. So again, you're not going to leave the patch there. Bisamichta, says Gemara, it's a thick fabric which you can't really use as a patch. Chazila omna. What do you mean? It can be used for a bloodletter to clean a wound. Beriska, it's made out of sackcloth. It's coarse and it wouldn't be able to be used to clean the wound. Iberiska, 1 second. Shein ben gimel al gimel, shein ben arbal arba mi bayale. Then it should have said it's not 4 by 4 tfachim. Why did it say it's 3 by 3 fingers? Kein riska just means that it's a very not good material, so it won't be used to clean a wound. We go to the next case. Again, we're going to go through every single case in the Brisa. Such as one before we go through this entire list. Shmuel said the rekik, the wafer on a windowsill, does not diminish the size. So if I have a windowsill that's 1 by 1 tefach, thereby allowing tumah to transfer, and I load up and there's piled up a bunch of wafers, even though the window is seemingly not 1 by 1 right now, says Shmuel, it has the din of 1 by 1 and the tumah still transfers. Why? Because you're prone to remove the rekik, the wafer. The question of the Gemara is, we have a whole long, lengthy list of items in this brisa that we're keep on pointing out in each and every one that you're going to remove it. And yet the brisa said that the only thing which does not diminish the size of the window were items that fall away on their own, frost and ice and things like that, but everything else does. So we're going through each and every item. So what is next? Aver v'abasar b'toldolim, a limb or flesh of an animal, behema chaya. Says the Gemara, arka v'azal. The animal's going to run away. It's attached to the animal. So therefore the animal's going to move and this item will no longer be in the window. Says the Gemara, b'kshura, the animal is tied up. Shachila. What do you mean you're going to slaughter such an animal? But tameya, mazal enachil salta guy, chusha, it's a weak animal. Pasik shadi pasik shadi liklavim, but you'll cut off this limb to give it to the dogs. You would not do that. And now the next case, and of course, just to point out to understand the world of dichois, the Gemara had a kasha on Shmuel from this brisa. And now we're asking, and a lot of these answers might seem quite far-fetched, which they certainly could be. But Shmuel could tell you, anytime Shmuel says, I could learn the brisa this way, that means that the brisa is not a steer to Shmuel, because the brisa is not clearly implying not like him. It says the Gemara, the next case of the brisa. If a bird it's resting in the window, says Gemara, Baruch Mazel, it's going to fly away. Bekasher, it's tied up. Shachale, you're going to shach the bitame. Mazel enachri bekalnita. Says the Gemara, what's a kalnita? It is a very thin bird. No one's going to eat such a bird. Yavle give it to a kid to play with. A wonderful toy. Bimisarit, it's a bird that scratches. Kalnita, says the Gemara, this thin bird loy misarta, doesn't scratch. Kalnita Kain kalnita, a bird similar to that does scratch in the first wide line. Next case, we have a guy that's sitting on the windowsill. Kai Vasel is going to get up, but Kaplis is tied up. Asi Chavre Shari, they will untie him. Talking about it as afflicted with saras, so no one's going to want to get sick, and again, not a halachic saras, but the disease. So no one's going to want to contract such a disease by coming near this guy. What do you mean? His friend who's also mitzvah will untie him. Ella bechavushe malchus. We're talking about he's a prisoner of the king, so no one's going to want to untie him. A baby was born after 8-month pregnancy. Says the Gemara, Asi Ibe. His mother's going to come darile and carry away the baby. Says Mar B'Shabbos. Titania, we learned in a Braisa. Ben Shemaina Reu Keven Va'asal Ataltal B'Shabbos. A baby born after 8 months has the status of a stone, and you're not allowed to move it on Shabbos. Of course, this was in a world that such a baby was not prone to live. Obviously, in our world, such is not true. Says the Gemara, Aval, just ended that Bryce, Ima Sheikha, Love Manikasai. The mother's allowed to lean over the baby and nurse the baby, Mimnea Sakana, but you're not allowed to actually move the child. Melach, salt, Chaziole. It's fit for one to use, so of course he's going to remove it from the window. Bimarirta, bitter salt. Chazila Iris, use it to tan hides. To Isba Kutzi, it has thorns. Kima de Kasha, Koisel Shakle. What do you mean? Such bad salt can ruin the wall, so you're going to remove it to protect the wall. The yasvi achaspa, it's on a shard, so it's not touching the actual wall. Chaspa gufa techotz, what do you mean? But the shard itself should block up the window and block from the tuma as we turn over to chaf amid base. Says the Gemara, the lesba shiura. The shard is not of sufficiently out of a sufficient size to be significant to be able to close up the wall. It has to be large enough to place between one slat and another, and this is a smaller shard, and therefore that's the reason why it doesn't act as a chatzitza, it doesn't act to close up the window. We continue, Kli Chares. What was the next case in earthenware vessel? Says the Gemara, Chazla, you're going to take it away. Dimitan, if it's dirty. Third line down, Chava Mebeis, Chazi Omna, the bloodletter can use it. Diminakiv it as a whole. Sefer Torah, the next case was Sefer Torah on the windowsill. Chazi Mikri, you can read from it, but Balu, it's worn out. You got to bury it. Sham taking asa, you're going to bury it right over there. Says the Gemara, Amarav, a little bit of a segue once we spoke about salt. You'll have to make a mechitza out of anything aside for salt, urevav, and animal fat. Because such items will not last and these items will fall away. You can make a wall out of. Amarav, salt, Isterikness, salt cannot be a valid mechitza if it's made out of isterikness salt, which is looser salt. Asks the Gemara, Vasha Damarabba. Person can make 2 piles of salt at each entrance to the Mavoi, Gemara and Erevin, and put a kaira on top of them, and therefore you'll be allowed to carry in the Mavoi on Shabbos. Shamelech Ma'amedis kaira, the salt holds up the beam. And the beam keeps the salt in place. Even though it's loose, but the beam holds it down. And that finishes part A of today's shiur, all the different items that don't act as a chatzitza, etc. We conclude quoting the Mishnah. What did the Mishnah say? We're about 12 lines down. Chafam and Beis. Again, you're building items next to your neighbor's wall, next to your neighbor's mill. The mill has to be 3 tefachim away from the wall, measured from the lower millstone, 4 tefachim measured from the higher millstone. Says the Gemara, why do you have to distance your rechayim, your mill, not next to your neighbor's wall? Mishum tiraya, because of the vibrations, it can ruin the wall. Ask the Gemara, we learned that if it's a chamar, that is how the mill is powered. The donkey pulls it. Says the Braisa, you have to distance it 3 3 tvachim measured from the base, which is arba from the hopper. But says the Gemara, if it's a mill powered by a donkey, there's no tiraya, there's no vibrations. So if the whole reason you're distancing the mill from your neighbor's walls because of vibrations, but a donkey doesn't have such, says the Gemara, you're right. Elamisham kaila. The reason is the noise of the mill, and that noise itself could damage a wall. Continues the Gemara, the 2 dots, the end of the Mishnah is Atanor Shloshim and Akal Yoshin Arbam and Asafa. You have to put a oven at a distance from the neighbor's wall. Amar Abaye Shema min Akal Yodetanor Tefach Nafka Mina Lemechel Memka. We see from here that it's 3 and 4 that the Kalya, the base must be a Tefach. Why do we care? We care for the halachas of buying and selling. And we continue with the next Mishnah, smack in the middle of Chafam Beis, another Mishnah about putting items in certain areas where they could damage someone else. Lo yamod adam tanur b'teich habayis. One is not allowed to place an oven in the house. Elim kain yesh al gabav gavaya arba amos, unless there's 4 amos above it to the ceiling. Again, why do you care? Well, aside from the fact you don't want to burn down your house, but the reason over here is because you don't want to burn down the neighbors' houses. So you have dalet amos between your oven and the ceiling. If you're putting the oven in an upper floor, you need to have a layer of plaster underneath the oven 3 tfachim so it doesn't set the floor on fire. Again, we're dealing with wooden structures. Ubakira, if it's a kira type of oven, then you need a tefach. Part A of the Mishnah. Now, what happens if lamaisa ve'im hizik? You tried your best, but guess what? The oven or the stove caused a fire. Mishale mash hazik. Shimon Aimer. Says Rav Shimon, I understand. What's the whole point of distancing yourself if you're going to be chayiv anyways? Rather, says Rav Shimon, you got to utilize the precautions. If you did, and there's still damage, you're potter. Lo yiftach adam chanush shel nachtuimim v'shel tzavayim tachas yisur shechaver. You're not allowed to open up a baker's shop, chanush shel nachtuimim, or tzavayim, or a dye shop underneath the storehouse of your friend. V'loy refes a barn. You're not open a cattle barn under the storehouse of your friend. Be'emes, says the Gemara, b'yayin etira v'loy refes bakar. If it's an oitzer that has wine, then you're allowed to open up the nachtaimin, the bakery, the tzvayim, the dye house, but not the cattle barn. Says the Gemara, the Tanya stira between our Mishnah, Vatani, we've learned in a Braisa. Betanur arba bakira shleish. Our Mishnah said a kira shleish and a tanur echad, only 1 tefach. But we see not that way. Amar Rabbi Kitanya he b'dinach taimim. That's a baker's oven. The tanur didan. His tanur is kikira dinach taimim. Says the Gemara, it's a name game. When it comes to the oven, the tanur and the kira of a baker, they're obviously burning more. Therefore, they need more of a space. Our oven's tanur didan is like the kira of the tachtonin, and therefore it only needs 3 tfachim. Lo yiftach hanais. The next case in the Mishnah Tana, we learned in a brayse imaisa refes bakar kodemes laitzer motor. If you have your cattle barn and then your friend comes and puts up his aitzer, you'll have to keep your cattle over there motor. Baya keep it verifates aitzer ma. What is the halacha if he swept, he sprinkled the storage place, but he didn't put anything there, meaning he prepared the room to have a storage place, but he just didn't stock it yet. Or he put in more windows, showing that he's going to use it as a storeroom. More windows, more air circulation, better to store grains in it, etc. So he prepped an area to be a storeroom. Are you now allowed to be your refes bucket nearby? Or once he preps it, you're not allowed to. What about if there's a pavilion and achsadja underneath the storehouse? What is the din? Shaila, if we should be curious that line. If you built an upper floor on top of his house, which people usually do for storage, but he didn't put anything in it yet, you let him put a refes bucket nearby. In all these cases, says the Gemara, Teiku b'siyata dishmaya. Ravuna Breder Yeshua Tamri v'rimayni mahu. What if he only started storing dates and pomegranates, but he didn't store other items that give you the name of the storehouse? Says the Gemara again. Teku. Be'emes yayin etirum. We concluded the Mishnah saying that be'etzem wine, if it's a wine storehouse, you're allowed to put the baker shop or the dyeing shop nearby, just not the cattle shop. Tana b'yayin etirum imnei shemash bichai. Why were they more lenient on wine? Because the smoke from the bakery, the smoke from the dyeing shop, in reality improves the wine. Mashbicha v'loy ref is bakum neisha masricha it sours and Amar Rav Yosef. Hi Didan, I feel kutta the shagar nami kashalei. Says Rav Yosef, guess what? Our wine is ruined even by a simple smoke of a candle. Amar Rav Sheshes v'asavtafa kirefes bakar damya aspasta is a certain plant which was used as animal fodder. Says Rav Shisha that's as bad as the cattle barn, and you're not allowed to put that near your neighboring field as well. I will conclude today with one more Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Chanos Shebechatzer. What is the story? If one has a store inside a chutzner was an area that multiple people had their houses opened into one chutzner. The other people can block him and protest, saying, we can't sleep. Everyone's coming to your store, and therefore, and your store is in our chutzner, we can't sleep. And he's allowed, that's a good valid claim. But one is allowed to create the kelim in his house and sell them in the shuk. You cannot protest and say to him, we can't sleep from the sounds of the hammer, the mill, or the sounds of the kids. We'll see what that means. So basically, if he opens a store in the chutzner, that you could protest. But if he's just creating things in his own house, that you cannot protest. We'll see more about this in the next year. B'siyata Dishmaya.